All right. Hi, friend. Let me make sure my volume is all the way up. It is. And I am so excited to bring another guest to you this month. And her name is Aleatha Shannon. And she is kind of, I think, probably mostly everything behind Willow Oak Farm and Fiber, as a lot of us, small fiber artists kind of are. We kind of wear all of the hats. And so she's a friend I've talked to before. I've mentioned that I'm part of a fiber business collective, which is a group of fiber artists, people in the fiber business doing this as a business and more than just like for fun and a hobby. It's still fun, but trying to focus and make it a business. And so I met Aleatha and she shared that she has a farm and she raises Angora rabbits and does a lot of work with Angora fiber. And I thought that she'd be a really interesting person for us to chat with. And she's got a lot of information to share. But I'm going to let her share a little bit with you all about who she is and how she got started on her fiber journey. And I'm going to go pin this in our membership to make it easy. But I do see that some of you are already joining me. So that's great. Say hi. Let me know. You can either share your name with StreamYard or just type it in the chat. And if you have questions for Aleatha, you're also welcome to ask them. And if she can't answer them right now, then I'm sure she'll be happy to answer them later. But she's going to do some fun stuff for us today and tell us all about who she is, what she does, and some things that she's trying to share about Angora and the fiber. So, hi Aleatha, thank you for
Hi,
joining me.
thanks. I'm excited. I got started with spinning during the pandemic. I knew what it was, like I knew it was a thing kind of because I'd done a little bit of knitting and I'm kind of like a natural fiber snob slash freak. And so like I knew where yarn came from, if that makes sense. But I hadn't done a whole lot of knitting because honestly, it was the kind of yarn that I wanted to use was out of my price range because this was back when I was in college and my husband was in grad school for a long time and we just didn't have a lot of extra money. But when I did have a hankering for a knitting project, I would buy the expensive yarn. So I made like two or three things. And whenever I would go into the yarn shop, it was just like so gorgeous, so amazing. I'd touch everything, I would want everything. And so I kind of tried to like not go there very often because it just wasn't a possibility at the time. But for my husband graduated several years ago and he has a real job. And I'm a homeschool mom raising my kids, and we've got a little bit of money now. Still not a whole lot. I can't make all of my dreams come true, but so with the spinning, I still honestly felt like I couldn't just go out and buy whatever yarn I want. Maybe it's a mom thing. I don't know. But I asked for a drop spindle and some wool for Christmas. And I was like, well, it's not really going to be like my thing or anything because I already do a whole bunch of other crafts, like sewing mostly, sewing clothes. And, but I was like, well, I'll just try it because I love wool and wool sweaters. Like I would go to the thrift stores and buy the coolest, nicest wool sweaters I could find. So I got the drop spindle and I was still kind of like, I don't know if I want to even try it, but I got it, so I'm going to try it anyway. But I don't know what it was. I was just really not quite nervous, but like, I'm not sure what it was, but I didn't want to do it, but I did. I was curious, but a little worried, I guess. And I finally tried it with the help of YouTube because this is a pandemic and I also live in Louisiana. There's not a lot of fiber art stuff happening down here. And so I didn't have anyone I could have teach me at all. So I went to YouTube and I think it was Christmas Day. I just sat down and I tried it with just this basic drop spindle. And it wasn't this exact kind of wool, but it was really similar. And I just tried it and I got completely mesmerized and just sat there for hours on Christmas Day spinning my first yarn. And
It's so cool.
like I was just shocked that it actually worked, you know? Like it seemed like it would be ridiculously hard and it would make any knitting project take, 20 times longer and was just ridiculous. But it really wasn't as ridiculous as I had thought. It was a whole lot of fun and just thinking of the possibilities of like different color blends and different fiber blends that you can't just go buy at the yarn shop was just blowing my mind. And even though I wasn't that experienced of a knitter, I was like, I could just do the spinning and then I would have yarn I need to use, and so it fixed my yarn problem. And anyway, the first yarn that I made, I took a picture of it and it's like not very good. Like it's thick and thin and very rustic looking, but not necessarily in a good way. But I loved it so much. Like after you make your yarn, you're supposed to wash it and kind of like rough it up a little bit, and then you hang it up to dry. And I hung it on my shower head to dry, and I just kept going in there and like squishing it. I was like, oh my gosh, it's wool yarn, and I made it. And I was just completely addicted right from the start.
That's awesome. That's really great. We have a couple people with just saying hi. We've got Stacy said hi, and Jan also says hi, and Debbie shared. So hi from Central Pennsylvania. I used to rescue Angoras and I would take them for fiber demonstrations. I miss having
Yay.
bunnies.
That's wonderful.
Um, so you have a farm. So tell us more about Willow Oak Farm. Do you just raise Angora bunnies? Do you have other animals too?
Yeah, it's just the Angora, really. I also have a big garden and I do some natural dyeing, which I'm trying to grow more natural dyes. So far, I've only been able to grow like one or two. But basically, after I learned how to spin, I was like, it's kind of an expensive hobby, kind of like knitting, but maybe even more expensive because of all the equipment,
Hmm.
like the spinning wheel. I mean, you can use a drop spindle and just use that, and it's totally fine. You can make all the yarn you want with a drop spindle. But I just got really obsessed, and so I wanted it all. And I needed a way to kind of at least have it pay for itself. And I was also looking for a career. My kids are not really babies anymore. And I do homeschool them so that, I'm not like free during the day by any means. But but I was wanting to do a little something more with my career.
Mm.
So I got rabbits really quickly because I love animals. And I was like, well, I don't think I'm ready for sheep. Like, I didn't grow up on a farm or anything. I've just had like small pets in my life. But I did research on Angoras and I found a lady near Baton Rouge who had some for sale. And so I got two Angoras and they were just going to be for myself. But I loved them so much that I wanted to expand that. And I also wanted to like bring it to my area, like both spinning and Angoras. Because like I said, there's not a whole lot of fiber art things happening in the South.
Hmm.
Obviously, there's a lot of cotton being grown, but it's all commercial. Um, so after, let's see, I got my first two rabbits, and then I got three more after about 8 months or so. And then I bred them and I got a litter. And
There's
right
one.
now I have 7 rabbits. Um, and I would like to continue breeding. Um, it's it's something that I really wrestle with in my mind, like the whole breeding thing. I didn't grow up on a farm, and you take on so much responsibility when you choose to breed animals
Mm-hmm.
because you have to have a plan for what to do with the babies. And rabbits are really good at making a lot of babies really fast. So it takes a lot of planning ahead and just being sure that you know what to do. Like you have a plan in place for every single potential baby, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's pets or keeping them for your own breeding program or your own fiber art business or for meat, because Angora rabbits are a dual purpose breed. They can be for fiber or meat, and I guess for pets too. But I did have a bit of a problem that I knew just because I live here that there's a lot of people raising rabbits in the South, but not Angora rabbits because they suffer a lot in the heat and it's really hot down here. And you can't really keep them outside, which is what most like rabbit meat farmers do, is they just keep them outside in hutches or whatever. You can't really do that with Angoras. It's just very risky and you would be doing a lot of work with like ice bottles and things. And I knew I didn't want to do that. So I have an air conditioned bunny barn, but with the babies, like if I'm gonna sell them, I need to make sure the people who buy them understand that this is either a house rabbit or, in an air conditioned shed or barn or something. And it's pretty hard to find. Like, I don't want to get to a place where I have more babies than I can get rid of to good homes.
Of
So
course.
then the next thing is the meat rabbit thing, which makes me really sad because I don't want to do that. Like this beautiful fiber animal that can't really have a good home and I can't keep it. That means I have to eat it. And that makes me sad. But that's what farming is. I mean, if you want to be a farmer, you have to make those choices. And it really sucks.
And we have someone else saying hi from Maryland. And so I was sharing with you a little bit. So I've knit with Angora in the past, and so the two that I'm really most familiar with, I've used Angora from Gallery Yarns, which I think they're like French raised Angoras, which is soft and fluffy. Very a lot of that, Angora halo and stuff. And then I've also knit with Angora from like I think it was Plymouth Yarns maybe. And there was such a difference, in the quality of the yarn and the softness of the yarn. And I know that there's a lot of misconceptions and just plain false information out there about Angora, and people say, oh, that it's not ethical to use it, and I think that that's a lot of maybe Chinese Angora. I'm not too clear on that, but that's in my own research. Like the Gallery Yarns, I know, like they keep them like pets like you do, and they really take care of them. And then there's where they're just mistreated. So I know you're trying to do a lot of education about Angora and clearing up a lot of misinformation that's out there. So what are some things that you would like people to know about Angora fiber and things you can make with it?
Yeah. Yeah, I've never actually purchased Angora yarn. But I have looked into it just for my own business research, and Gallery Yarns, from what I remember, I probably should back up. There's two ways to get fiber off of an Angora rabbit. The first way is plucking, and the second way is shearing, which is just like shearing sheep. And I actually forgot to show you my rabbit that I brought during my talking
Huh?
about my farm, so I'm gonna get her. This is Juno.
Let
Say
me
hi,
see.
Juno.
If I remove my
Juno's a giant Angora, so she is humongous. But she's just a sweet, just cuddly little marshmallow. Anyway, so um, plucking is what is controversial because, well, Angora rabbits, most Angora rabbits will shed or molt their coat on like a 3 or 4 month cycle. And so you can literally just pull it out, just like when your dog sheds, if you've had like a husky or something, eventually, like once a year, or I don't know, their fur, you just pull it out and it just falls right out and it doesn't hurt them at all. So that is one way you can get it out, by brushing or just plucking it out. Um, but sometimes it doesn't all molt evenly, like all at once, and so you end up like getting a handful that's ready and then the rest isn't ready, and it's also very time consuming to pluck. And if it's not ready and you still try to pluck it out, it hurts. Like it's literally ripping the fur out of the rabbit. And that's where the ethical stuff comes into play, is that there are some Angora farms that were kind of like exposed in China and also in France, I believe. It
Mm.
wasn't the one that you mentioned. I'm going to talk about that later, but they got, caught on video
Wow.
just ripping fur out of rabbits that were screaming,
Yeah.
horrifying stuff. And so, I mean, it's all kind of shrouded in secrecy and stuff, but what I suspect is going on is that they have these rabbits that they pluck, which could be just fine, but they have, 50 of them or 100 of them, I don't know. And they have a business that they need to make money for, to, pay off their business for all the expenses of raising the rabbits and all that.
Mhm.
And I think what happens is that, like, yay capitalism, they start like forgetting that the rabbits are living creatures and start treating them like objects and just being as efficient as possible to make more money or to, save money. And so that's my suspicion, is where that unethical ripping the fur out of the rabbit comes from, is that these big Angora farms trying to be super efficient like a factory, and it ends in mistreatment of the animal. Like they're ripping out all the fiber at once rather than waiting for it to be ready, or they have like a tight schedule and they just do it when it's a certain length but it's not actually molting. That's what I suspect.
Mhm.
But it's very like they're not going to tell you. We don't really know what's going on unless you work there, I guess. But shearing does not hurt. I mean, I wouldn't say they love being sheared, because you have to restrain them a
Mhm.
little bit. Like when you do their back, it's pretty easy. I don't think they mind at all. But when you do their belly, you have to like flip them over or hold them up somehow. And they don't like, they're not in pain. And I wouldn't even say they're that scared. They're just kind of annoyed sometimes. But I would even say some rabbits enjoy being sheared. It's kind of like people. Some
Mhm.
people love going to the salon, getting their hair washed and styled and cut. And other people just feel uncomfortable the whole time. So I would say shearing is ethical. The difference between sheared Angora and plucked Angora is a difference, though, because with plucked Angora, the fiber isn't cut on one end, and so it has a very natural taper on both ends,
Mm.
which makes a difference in the yarn. Um, Honestly, I think it is such a tiny difference that it's kind of ridiculous. And we use shorn wool all the time. Like, what's the big deal? But some people think that is a very big difference and it's important to them.
Yeah.
And the yarn company, the one that starts with a G, I forgot,
Galler.
Galler in France, they have a really nice website that details their fiber harvesting process, if I'm remembering the right one, which I think I am.
I think so, yeah.
And they say they do pluck, but they use some kind of an herbal supplement that makes the hair fall out without any pain. That's really intriguing to me, and I'm really curious what it is, but obviously they're not sharing it because it's their business. But that's pretty cool. I think that's a cool idea.
That does sound cool, yeah. I saw you have, on your website, on Facebook, there were pictures from when you had, I think, sheared.
Yeah, they look so
I'll
naked and
share.
sad when they're sheared.
Let me share that while we're chatting. I thought that would be. Um,
Juno has about, I think, 1 month to go before she'll be sheared.
so this is the after, I think,
Yeah,
or in the middle.
that's the after.
And this is before,
Mm-hmm.
and this is
That's
the after.
after. I know he looks ridiculous, but honestly, they are so happy when they get sheared because they feel so fresh and cool, and they love it.
Yeah, so that's quite a difference.
I just thought of something else I wanted to share about the more like factory farm Angora. The Italian, the what is it, Plymouth yarn?
Uh-huh.
It
Yeah.
says it's made in Italy. Um, and I don't like. I'm suspicious. Like maybe it's just spun in Italy
That
and
might be
comes
the
from
tale.
China because, according to Wikipedia, 90% of Angora wool comes from China. So that would be my guess, especially if the quality is really different. Because the other thing I've heard about Chinese Angora is they don't, uh, the quality is less because um, often the staple length that they end up with is shorter for whatever
Mhm.
reason. And when Angora is really short, it starts to pill and it's kind of scratchier and it's just not as good. It doesn't make it as good of a yarn or as good of a fabric. So I don't want to slander the company because obviously I don't know where they get their Angora, but I am suspicious.
It's I mean, I'll share a picture with the group. I think I have some of both around, but there's a big difference in kind of everything about the two different yarns.
I'll
Uh,
show you some Angora that is a
and then
good
the
staple
fun
length.
is a totally different product, I think, too.
Yeah, this is Angora. It just like it floats. It's
Hmm.
very light and it should be at least 3 inches long to spin a good yarn. But I've heard that often Chinese Angora, they only use like an inch long or so, just probably because of the process that they're trying to do as much as possible. It's just not as good quality.
Yeah. So, what are some things that you love to make to knit with the yarn that you spin?
Okay, um, first I'll show you some yarn. This is this is the unspun blend that I made, and it's like I think about 15% Angora. And
Hmm.
then it also has Cormo wool and a really fine llama and a bunch of silk as well. And I spun it into this yarn that's like a uh,
It's
bulky
really
yarn that has like a muted pink color overall. And the thing about adding even just a little bit of Angora is it makes your yarn get a fuzzy halo over time.
hmm
And this one, it just has a little bit, so it's a very little halo. But if you add, like this is 50% Angora and 50% llama, and it is very fuzzy, has this
want
gorgeous texture. Yeah.
I want
And
to pet and squish it.
I know this is the softest thing in the world. It's actually Surrey llama, which is really rare and awesome. So you can tell the difference between half Angora, half llama,
Hmm.
and a little bit of Angora and then llama with wool. The Angora and llama actually are more heavy, drapey fibers. They don't have springiness, they don't have memory where they can stretch and then spring back. And then if you add wool to it, it makes it have those properties. So the blend that you use, I know a lot of you guys are knitters, not spinners, but if you're just getting 100% Angora yarn, it's going to be drapey and heavy. But if you get one that's a blend, then it could be, more and more like the properties of whatever it's blended with.
Hmm.
And here I've got 100% Angora beret that I knitted. It's hand spun and hand knitted.
Wow, that looks
And it's
gorgeous.
so fuzzy and it just drapes. It's not a stiff beret, obviously. It's just a drapey beret and it is incredibly soft. And the fuzz is just very eye catching and beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, so we have
Makes
some
me sweat and
comments.
fuzzy.
We've got, I can see Althea's rabbits are loved.
Thank you.
And Sally said, how do you combine Angora to llama? What's the process?
Okay, that's a good question. For any of these blends, what you have to do is card them together or comb them together. This is where it gets expensive with the equipment. You would need hand carders, which I didn't bring with me, and they're in a different room. But they look like dog slicker brushes, and you put a little bit of one fiber on, and then you put a little like in layers of another fiber, and you brush them over and over until they gradually blend together. And combs, wool combs are really similar, only they have like long metal teeth, but they do the same thing almost. I also have a drum carder, which does the same thing, only much more and much faster.
That looks expensive.
It is expensive, but that's how I make this. I start with raw fiber, fresh off the animal. I wash it, I dye it, then I start carding it so it gets all smooth and combed out. And then I can blend it into these little, they're like a rectangular sheet, and then I roll it up. And once you have that, then you can spin it into your blended yarn.
Nice. So the blending is done kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
Nice. And then what other questions did I have for you? So, do you have a favorite tip or trick to share? Maybe it's about beginners using the drop spindle as a beginner or knitting or anything yarn related.
Yeah, my tip would be if you do learn how to spin,
Mhm.
use your yarn. Don't treat it as super precious. I know it is an expensive hobby and all that, and knitting is an expensive hobby, but just if you don't use your yarn, then you won't know if you like that yarn. And then you won't know what kind of yarn you want to blend together and how you want to spin it. So that's my number one tip is just use it. The animals are growing more. It's expensive, but it's not like there's not going to be any more. There's no scarcity.
Right. It's a renewable resource.
Right.
Is nice.
Oh, I wanted to shout out to a yarn, an Angora yarn from a small Angora breeder. Actually, she's huge, way bigger than me. She has a lot of rabbits. But she has a website. It's sinfullysoft.com. And she sells mill spun Angora yarn that's blended with merino and silk and other things. And I've never actually used it myself. I should really try that out. But it looks so beautiful. And I know from experience, like the blend would just be so amazing. Pure luxury.
I think I found her website, so I'll put that if that works. I think that looked like
I think so, yeah.
Angora yarns. Yeah, so I can share that. And then I also want to share your websites and other places where people can find you. Um, and you also sell on your website. I'll share your website. So it's Willow Oak Farm and Fiber square site.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll put all of those links, and I shared them in an email earlier. But I'm going to share your website because I have it open so people can see what you have. Uh, Make sure I share the right tab. Okay. So this is Althea's website. So she has you sell different things. So you sell fiber and bats yarn, and then you also have some earrings and other
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
decorative.
I'm wearing some of my earrings. These are hand spun wool earrings that I dipped in indigo, which is a natural dye.
Okay.
So I've got lots of earrings too for people who love and appreciate hand spun, but maybe they don't want to try it yet, I guess. Or maybe do. I've had hand spinners buy my earrings too.
Um,
I see a question about the sheets from the. I'm guessing that's from the drum carter. So I have a.
yeah, Sally asked to see a sheet.
This is not angora, but it's wool and silk, so it makes a big sheet like this.
So, and then you spin directly from the sheet. Is that how that
Right.
works?
Yeah, you can just rip off like a handful and then spin a little handful at a time.
Cool. So I was also going to share, not slides, we're sharing screen. So on Althea's website on Willow Oak Farm and Fiber, so she has some different blends of fiber if you wanted to get into giving that a try. And these are, if that gets bigger, we'll see. Just so you can get a closer view of hand spun Angora tassel earrings. These are really pretty. And embroidery scissors with a little bit of an Angora tassel too. And then lots of different spinning fibers and bats and some more earrings. And somewhere here it is, the beginner drop spindle kit. If that's something that you wanted to experiment with, Althea has those on her website, and so you can purchase those. And so it's a kit. It includes 4 ounces of natural white wool combed top, Corriedale, and a drop spindle. And that's what she learned to spin with.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can also get a little bit of fiber if you want to, of Angora fiber too, if you wanted to play with that. And I'll put, yeah, all her links. I shared a little bit of her Instagram before too, so you can see that. And I'll share that quickly with you all. So you can see more pictures and some videos of Althea and her rabbits. And keep in touch and see what she's up to. This is her spinning wheel. Yeah, and so if anyone has any questions or anything, you can put them in the chat, or if you're watching on the replay, and you have a question for Althea, I can reach out to her and ask her. And yeah, anything else that you wanted to share? Any fun things planned coming up? New collections?
Oh, here's a question. At what point do you dye the fibers? What do you use as a mordant to fix natural dyes? Great question. You can dye your fiber when it is clean and washed. You can dye it when it is roving, like brushed out. You can also dye it as yarn, and each different option will give you a different end result. Um, if you just dye the raw fiber, well, the washed fiber, then you can blend it on your drum carder or your hand carders right then. And so that's when you get a yarn that has so many different colors mixed in like that. Or this is, I think it's a quarter Angora and a quarter Gulf Coast native wool, which is a southern sheep, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
And you can see it has like a kind of a heathered look, where the Angora was, I think, a light gray and the wool was dark brown. So that's the blending, dyeing before blending. You can also dye, if you buy roving that comes like in those long strips, like in the drop spindle kit, or combed top, that's another similar product, then you can like lay it out in a pattern and dye like different sections to get like stripes or whatever, like kind of like dyeing skeins of yarn. And then you would spin it and it would depending on how you spin it, you can have different yarn results. And then you can also just dye yarn, which you've probably seen. There's different ways to do that too. So there's many options. The mordant I use is typically with wool and animal fibers. You usually would use alum. It's like a mineral that has been used for many centuries. It's fairly safe. Um, I'm trying to think if there's any other options. There's some things you can dye without any mordant, like walnut is one of those things that have a natural tannin in them.
Hmm.
But the mordant, if you did use a mordant, it would change the color slightly. So depends on what you want. But I usually just use alum or something with a lot of tannin. What was I going to say after that? Oh, things I'm doing this year. This in 2022, like back in April, I got a floor loom, and I didn't know how to weave. Like I didn't know how to use it. So, but I learned how to use it this year, and next year I'm hoping to weave with hand spun yarn because I've only used store-bought yarn before. I'm also hoping to have some baby rabbits. I only did one litter last year because it was my first time, and I just wasn't sure how it would all work out and all of that. But it went really well, and so now I'm focusing on the kind of the farmer side or the breeder side of things, which is trying to improve your rabbits so that they produce more fiber, so they're healthier, so they don't have various issues, and also so that you have more when your older ones die. Just continuing that, and I'm really excited to do that because I've got one rabbit that's really good at producing fiber,
Mm-hmm.
and she's the one I used last time to breed a litter, but I'm going to breed her again with a different buck, and I'm just really excited.
Uh, that must be so nice to be able to, continue the generations and stuff.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I hope that you'll keep in touch and let us know what you're up to. And you all can find, again, um, Aleatha's website is willowoakfarmandfiber.square.site. And you can also follow her on Instagram at Willow Oak Farm and Fiber, and also on Facebook, the same Willow. I think I spelled that right. Willow Oak Farm and Fiber. And oh, we have one more question.
Okay.
Kay asked, "Is there a difference between buck and doe hair?"
I've never heard that before, and I haven't noticed it. I do know that often the does are larger and produce more fiber. I have heard that. Um, Also, I'm not sure if it's true with rabbits, but I suspect it is because it's true with sheep. If they get neutered, then they produce more fiber. So you would like it's if you neuter a male rabbit, then all of their energy is going just towards fiber. So I've heard that with sheep, they make really good fiber producers. So I guess that's the same with rabbits, but I have not heard there's like a texture difference between them.
That's interesting. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I've
Thank
learned so
you.
much. I knew almost nothing other than that, like, ooh, Angora is pretty and soft and fluffy, but behind the scenes stuff I love learning, and I'm so glad that you're able to join us.
Thank you so
And
much.
this was a pleasure. And so we've got some people saying thank you
Thank you, everyone.
so much. All right, I'm going to end. Ooh, I'm waving off camera.